How many of us just love the Harry Potter books? And what's not to love? J.K. Rowling has built a fascinating world for us to explore, a world full of amazing magic, fantastic beasts, odd but true-to-life characters we've come to know and love or love to hate, all wrapped up in humor and heart and topped off with a special British flair. You've read the books forwards and backwards more times than you can count, and you love them to bits. There's just one problem. You're hungry for something new. You want to find another magical world you can live in with new characters you can get to know, with their own stories to tell, and you've already met Greek gods and goddesses with Percy Jackson and traveled to Narnia with the Pevensies. Luckily, I've got just the solution for you. Here are 5 books that you may not have heard of before, but they can start you off on new fantastic journeys, the likes of which you could never have imagined. Haven't we all dreamed of being like Harry Potter and doing something special with our lives? Young Taran, the protagonist of the Book of Three by Lloyd Alexander, may live in Prydain, a world of enchantresses, warriors, and fairies inspired by the tales of Welsh mythology, but he's really not so different from us. Taran starts off stuck on a farm in Caer Dallben, making horseshoes for non-existent horses, when all he wants to do is make a sword and go off adventuring. The ancient sorcerer Dallben then appoints Taran as assistant pig keeper, in charge of Henwen, a pig with the unique gift of telling the future. When Henwen suddenly runs away in fear, Taran pursues her only to come across the Horned King, a bloodthirsty warlord terrorizing the kingdom who will stop at nothing to find Henwen and ensure that her gift cannot be used against him. Taran's hunt for his lost pig turns into a quest to save the entire land of Prydain, but how can a lowly assistant pig keeper do that? At first, Taran is aided by the Crown Prince Gwydion, a mighty warrior, but that partnership is cut short by the sorceress Queen Akren. Instead, Taran falls in with a band of much more unlikely heroes. Eilonwy, a princess who uses strange magic and even stranger similes, Flutterflam, a bard whose harp strings snap whenever he stretches the truth, Dolly, a dwarf who's supposed to be able to turn invisible but can't, and Gurgi, a hairy little creature who is obsessed with crunchings and munchings but is also fiercely loyal to his friends. As they travel the land of Prydain, Taran will learn that friends can do impossible things together, that adventure is more costly than he could have thought, and that home means more to him than he ever realized. Lloyd Alexander describes a land that mirrors the hills and forests of Wales with the sort of straightforward but evocative writing style you'd expect from a classic fantasy novel written in the 1960s. They don't make them like this anymore. If you want to see what happens after the Book of Three, you want to check out the next 4 novels in Lloyd Alexander's Chronicles of Prydain, where you'll get to find out what Taran learns from his first adventure. If the mystical aura of Welsh myth in the Chronicles of Prydain strikes your fancy, you might also be interested in The Lost Years of Merlin by T.A. Barron, which draws on Welsh versions of Arthurian legend. Merlin is one of those names that pops up all over the Harry Potter books, but we never actually learn much about him. The Lost Years of Merlin asks the question, what was Merlin like when he was Harry's age? At first, the answer to that question is, washed up on a beach with no idea who he is. Called Emrys by a woman who claims to be his mother, the boy begins to develop magical powers, eventually using them to set a fire to scare away a bully, but he accidentally blinds himself in the process. Emrys solemnly refuses to use his powers again, but after acquiring a mystical second sight, he sets off to learn about his origins, carrying with him a pendant called the Galator. He finds himself on a mythical island called Fincara, where he befriends Rhea, a feisty girl who can speak to trees and animals, and therefore understands the danger posed by a blight that is covering the island bit by bit. Rhea convinces Emrys to temporarily put his personal quest on hold so they can travel to the lair of the Grand Elusa, a nature spirit, and ask her advice about how to stop the blight. When Rhea is kidnapped on behalf of the evil forces causing the blight, Emrys has to wrestle with his fears about using his powers again, as he goes on a quest to rescue Rhea, save the island, and finally learn who he really is. Although this action-packed telling of Merlin's origins is completely original, the novel also weaves in plenty of elements from ancient Welsh myths, imbuing the story with a sense of weight and history. The next 4 books in the Lost Years of Merlin series let you watch the boy Merlin grow into a young man as he learns more about the role he is destined to play in the saga of Arthurian legend. If you enjoyed the way the Lost Years of Merlin series gives you an origin story with a fresh new twist on a classic tale in British literature, then you might want to check out Peter and the Starcatchers by Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson. It all started when Ridley Pearson's daughter asked him how Peter Pan met Captain Hook. This novel certainly tells you how that happened, but it doesn't stop there. It also tells you how Neverland got its name, shows you where mermaids came from, and reveals the source of Peter Pan's flight. Surprise! It may not be pixie dust after all. Before it can solve all of those fascinating mysteries, this novel first offers up a cast of incredible characters who will all play their parts in Peter Pan's beginnings. There is, of course, the boy Peter, who is de facto leader of his ragtag group of orphans, but there's also Molly, the precocious daughter of Lord Astor, who knows all about her father's special mission as part of a secret organization called the Starcatchers. This mission holds the fate of the world in the balance and concerns a trunk containing a mysterious, powerful substance called star stuff that glows, rings, and even makes things float. And that's not even the half of it. The story jumps from character to character as they sail across the Atlantic Ocean on 3 different sailing ships until a storm strands them all on a tropical island which is fiercely defended by its native inhabitants, the mollusks. Peter and Molly will have to work together to find that star stuff-filled trunk and keep it from falling into the wrong hands, fending off pirates, mollusks, rogue sailors, and even giant crocodiles. Of course, when something that powerful is in play, strange and unpredictable things are bound to happen along the way. The high-spirited, fast-paced adventures of this novel are full of wit and humor, but they also remind us of the value of friendship and compassion over violence and selfishness, and that growing up is a natural part of life for everyone. Or almost everyone, anyway. To see what happens to Peter Pan after he becomes Peter Pan, but before his big adventure with Wendy, you can read the next 3 novels in the Peter and the Starcatchers series. What would you do if you stumbled across a huge, beautiful blue stone in the middle of the woods? Would you leave it where you found it? Would you keep it for yourself? If your name is Aragon, you would try to trade it for food. Living on a farm in the land of Alagasia with his uncle and cousin, 15-year-old Aragon has to do whatever he can to help make ends meet. Little does he know that this stone will set him off on an adventure that will change his life forever. That's because the stone is actually not a stone at all. It's a dragon egg, something that hasn't been seen in this kingdom ever since a man named Galbatorix destroyed the group known as the Dragon Riders when he took over the entire kingdom by force many years ago. Once the egg hatches, Aragon bonds with the dragon, meaning that their life forces are connected and they can even communicate telepathically. He names the dragon Saphira and secretly begins raising her. Dark forces are looking for Saphira, though, and they strike into the very heart of Aragon's home. Forced to flee the village where he has lived his entire life, Aragon is joined by Saphira and by Brahm, a mysterious and secretive bard who somehow knows all about dragon riders and their incredible abilities. As they travel, pursued by Galbatorix's evil minions, Saphira grows larger and stronger, while Brahm helps to give Aragon the combat skills and magical knowledge he will need to be a dragon rider. In the course of his journey, Aragon loses and gains companions before deciding to join the Varden, an organization dedicated to resisting Galbatorix's rule, where his status as a dragon rider would make him a key player in their efforts. While the steps Aragon takes may conform to many of the well-tested tropes of epic fantasy, they are bound up in a fascinating, fully realized world with its own unique history and mythology rich in cultural detail. The achievements of this novel are even more impressive when you consider that the author was only 19 when it was published. You can dig deeper into the world of Alagasia in the next 3 books of the Inheritance Cycle. If you love stories set in incredible worlds like the ones in Aragon or in Harry Potter, you probably wondered what it would be like to live in those worlds. But have you ever wondered what it would be like for someone or something from those worlds to come into ours? That's precisely what happens in Inkheart by Cornelia Funk, but 12-year-old Meggie doesn't know that at first. All she knows is that a strange-looking man called Dustfinger showed up in the middle of the night to see her father, who she calls Mo. To Meggie, Mo is just a bookbinder, but Dustfinger calls Mo Silvertongue and talks with him in secret about someone called Capricorn who is looking for them. The next day, Mo and Meggie go to stay with Eleanor, a rather cantankerous book collector related to Meggie on her mother's side. Soon, Mo is kidnapped on Capricorn's orders, so Meggie, Eleanor, and Dustfinger decide to conduct a rescue mission. When they arrive at Capricorn's village, Meggie learns that Capricorn kidnapped Mo because he has the unique ability to read aloud so wonderfully that characters and objects come out of books into the real world, with the terrible catch that something from the real world has to go into the book in exchange. Capricorn and Dustfinger were read out of a book called Inkheart by Mo, and Capricorn wants to destroy all the copies of it so no one can make him go back. In the quest to stop Capricorn, Meggie will have to escape from his village, find the author of Inkheart, and figure out if she is able to harness the same skill as her father to not only read people out of books, but also to read them back in. Clearly, the magical elements alone are enough to make this book an incredible story, but it's perfect for you if you love books, since it draws from so many classic stories, and each chapter even starts with a quote from another book. You can read the next 2 books in the Inkworld trilogy to see how Meggie and Mo continue to reckon with the power of stories. Those are all of the stories I have to offer you today, and I hope that you love learning about these magical new places just as much as you love the world of Harry Potter.